We're going to talk about today with regard to how one might tell if a 2-bolt block has been converted to a 4-bolt block is the appearance of the saddles in the block, the main saddles, and what these main saddles would look like as originals and as they have been line honed, which would be one of the ways to be, it would be an indicator if the block has been converted from a 2-bolt to a 4-bolt. And we'll start by looking at this main saddle and its appearance, which this block has never been line honed, so it has the original appearance to it, and it's something that we need to look at. Also, we will look at the external oil passage and the oil temp passage, which on 4-bolt main blocks, the 4-bolt blocks have an extra passage for an external oil cooler. We would want to look at these also in determining if a block has been converted from a 2-bolt to a 4-bolt. Now, I don't have a 2-bolt main block here, but we're going to talk about the things to look for in case you are interested in purchasing a block for your restoration, and you might need to know what to look for. This is the main saddle area here that we would look at to see if the block has been line honed, which would be an indicator, one of the indicators of a 2-bolt block being converted to a 4-bolt block. And if you look at the original grain in this block, you can see that it has a certain appearance to it, which is quite different from the appearance of a block that's been line honed. Now, this block is original, it's never been altered in any way, so we know that this block is an original block. These are the extra passages, or I might say the extra passage that you would find on a 4-bolt block, a factory 4-bolt block. And the oil sending passage on this block is slightly larger than that of a 2-bolt main block. But for purposes of identifying a 4-bolt block, this extra passageway for an external oil cooler would be present. Look at the inside passageway of the external oil passage and note the appearance of the inside, how it was drilled and tapped. If someone has converted a 2-bolt main to a 4-bolt main, this extra passageway would need to be drilled and tapped because the 2-bolt blocks have a boss here, but it is not drilled and tapped. So the inside appearance of this passageway could be an indicator of whether it was a factory 2-bolt block converted to a 4-bolt block. Also, the oil temperature sending boss. On a 2-bolt block, this boss is slightly smaller in diameter than a factory 4-bolt block. So these are some of the things we're going to talk about, what to look for in whether you have purchased or will purchase a block that has been converted from a 2-bolt to a 4-bolt block. Okay, we're going to walk over and take a look at this block. This block was a 2-bolt main block converted to a 4-bolt main block. And we're going to look at some of the indicators that this has been done. Now, first of all, we'll look at the main saddle, and you'll notice that the main saddle has been line honed recently. Now, line honing in and of itself does not mean that the block has been converted from a 2-bolt to a 4-bolt, but it's just one of the indicators that you would see that would be necessary in converting a 2-bolt to a 4-bolt. Now, on this block also, we look at the external oil passage. And again, in order to convert a 2-bolt to a 4-bolt main block, this extra passageway would need to be added. Now, if you look inside this passageway, you'll see that the machinist who drilled and tapped this did not drill it deep enough, and therefore did not open the passageway up clear through like you would have noticed on this block. Look at the swirl marks left from the honing process. If you notice the marks left as a result of the honing process, you have horizontal swirl marks that are within the saddle area. This would be present when converting a 2-bolt to a 4-bolt block. Now I'd like to move over and look inside the passageway so that you can see what the passageway looks like from the machinist who drilled and tapped the passageway. Notice on this extra passageway that would be present on a 4-bolt block, if you look inside, you'll see that the passageway was not drilled and tapped all the way through, as was on the previous block that we looked at. This would be an indicator that the passageway was added to help convert the block in appearance to a 4-bolt block. Also, if you look at the oil sending passage, you'll see the freshly cut threads inside that would indicate that the machinist also opened up the diameter size of this passageway to meet the specs of the 4-bolt block. And again, the 2-bolt block passageway for the oil temp is slightly smaller than this passageway. We're going to look at this cap, which is the original cap to this block. And you will notice that on the bottom side of the cap, on the flat surface of the cap, we have vertical marks on the bottom of the cap, which is an indicator that this cap has never been shaved. Also, again, I want to point out the original grain from this cap and its appearance from the factory. Again, if this block had ever been line honed, you would see horizontal swirl marks on the main surface of the cap, and also horizontal swirl marks on the cap surface, which if you note here, we're looking at vertical marks. Okay, here's the cap off the second block, and again we're going to put the emphasis on the appearance of the cap. Referring back to the grain on the previous cap, you'll notice that this cap has been line honed and has horizontal swirl marks on the bottom side of the cap on the main surface. Also, if you look closely at the cap face, you'll see horizontal swirl marks as well, where the cap had to be shaved to bring the center line distance between the camshaft and the crankshaft back into tolerance. So again, the appearance of the cap is an indicator that this cap has been line honed and was cut also to bring the center line distance back into specs.